Oh, wait. That's why. I was wondering why nothing shows up. No. So yesterday when we talked about what a good test case contains, right? It contains the inputs, talks about the execution conditions and expected behaviors, right? And here are some of the characteristics it should have it when we create it. So let's talk through it. How do I go take a requirement and then start coming to a point where writing the test cases for that? Okay. So here's one of the requirements that I've pulled together, right? So in the system, you have it that site administrator should be able to do any of the functions, right? In order to do that, the first thing they should be able to log into the system. So if you have this requirement, you start identifying, how do I take it this and start writing a test case, right? So one of the other thing when I showed you the estimation, right? We think about it, hey, for this particular thing, how many test cases I will need it, what scenarios I need it, right? So if I have to test it comprehensively, can somebody log into the system? What are the kind of things I need to do, right? So obviously, let's say if the credential is only just user ID and a password. So I'll provide them a valid user ID and a password, right? So one way I can log into system is by providing a valid ID and a password. Okay. What are the other scenarios that I will encounter that I have to think about in testing? Anybody think about negative scenario? This is a positive scenario. Invalid password, right? So you say it's invalid ID is 1. Invalid password is another one.
Network failure.
Hang on.
Network failure.
Well, network failure is a completely different thing, right? So think about from functional testing, if I'm doing it, what else do it?
He should be able to, when he logs in, he should be able to see the data and whatever.
Okay, that's aspect. Think of it, whenever you're doing it, keep everything in the context of what is within the requirements. Don't try to expand it too much. And more important thing, don't assume anything.
Try using only a password without ID.
So will that be same as invalid ID?
So is it accepting numerical or alphabetical?
But my password combination and user ID could be anything, right?
Forgot password.
Forget password is same thing as invalid password, right? I don't know what my password is. Now, forgot password, what do you talk about? That's an additional functionality. Again, go back to the context of what is a requirement. I'm trying to be able to log into the system. That's all it is. It doesn't say that, hey, I forgot my password, I want to reset the password. That's, to me, it's an additional functionality that this requirement is not calling it.
He needs to be opening the web page.
That's a task.
You need to click on the signing.
Again, those are how, what, this, think of a what.
Are there any other things like signing in with other options?
Right, but
Other things?
again, put back into the context of the system. What is the context of the system? ID and a password only. Right. Again, that's how you start taking a 3C and a T and start it. There's one more scenario. If I don't provide any data and click it into login, what happens at that time? Should it be allowed? Should it allow? What should be doing it? Okay. So think of it, right? If I have to comprehensively test it, that the functionality works for the ability to log in, I have 1 positive test case and 3 negative test cases that I need to do it, right? In the first scenario, I should be successful. In the other 3 scenarios, there should be some sort of error messages, right? So you took a requirement and built it, what we call it is a tree or possibility, right? In order to test this requirement, what all I need to do? Okay. Now, this all are called leaves. There may be another way that if you do it, and we'll look into any additional requirements that will do it. But for each one of those leaves in your tree diagram, you have to write a test case. Okay. So let's write a test case. Let's write one for a valid ID and a password, right? So we'll write one for this thing. Okay. So let's start looking at the template. Okay, so here's the template. Let's first walk through the template. Okay, is it visible all the way from the back? You see it? Okay. So typically, when you're trying to capture a test case, we say that it needs to get the input, the behavior, and the state of the system, right? So if I go back to this thing, what does test case contain? Documentation for the inputs, execution conditions, and expected behavior, right? So let's walk through it, right? So as you create the test cases for a given system or for a given requirement, you will be creating many, right? So you need some sort of what I call it is additional attributes that enables you to file and separate the test cases, right? So you can identify, hey, specifically what project name and module for which I'm writing. The first 6 thing is around the logistics of filing it, who created it, when they created it, what is, if you execute it, what will be executed, when it was executed. Then there is a priority. Remember, like high, medium, low. If I run into a time constraint, I need to understand which are more high priority that I'm going to execute it. So this enables you to identify that. The test case number is nothing but just a numerical number. If you're using it modern ALM systems, it'll automatically generate those numbers for you. Okay. Then the title is essentially what exactly you're trying to do it, what you're trying to accomplish it. Okay, as part of this test case. Then it comes a precondition. So precondition are typically what should be the state of the system before you execute this test case. So what must be true in order for me to start executing this test case? That's called preconditions. Okay, as we go through it, we'll look into it, right? Because if the precondition is not true, the state of the system is not in the position that you wanted to execute the test case, right? So you cannot guarantee the outcome of the test case. So that's why it's you clearly identify what should be the true in the system before I try to do anything. Okay. Then it comes to dependency. If you're dependent on specific things, right? So for example, we talk for the Amazon example, right? That, hey, when I try to check it out, I should be able to do a payment. Right? Typically payments is external systems, right? So you put the dependency that, hey, the external system is up and working when I'm trying to do this payment system, right? So that's an example of dependency. The summary is essentially a description of what exactly you're trying to accomplish. Then it comes out exactly what are the steps, what actions you will be doing it. And for that, what is the expected results? Okay. So remember, every time you do something in the system, right, system should change some behavior if you're trying to do an action. And that behavior, what is that change in behavior is what is expected results, what you should see here. And then when you actually execute it, you will capture what is actually happened. And then you compare expected results and actual results to see if they are exactly same or different, right? If they are different, then you know system is not working as expected. If they are same, then it's good. Then you can go to the next step, repeat the same process. Okay. Then it talks about the data. Remember what I said, like when we were talking through the test plan. If it's a credit application, we need to know where the data comes in or what exactly the data I'm going to use it for this. Okay. then the post condition. If I successfully execute this test case, what is true in the system? Okay. So what should the state of the system should look like? Remember, precondition is before I executed what the state of the system is. I executed what is happened in the system, and now what is the state of the system at the end? Okay. And then obviously, like if you put any nodes, the status is as I go through the transaction, right? I do design, I do it like it's kind of executed, and those kind of all those things becomes the status. Right? It's a life cycle of test case. So this is the template. Now, what you're going to find it is most of the systems are going to follow this pattern. Some of them may have additional information, right? But this is the way that I always recommend people is forget the tools. First, figure out what you need to write it. Once you have an understanding, then you can just utilize any tool. Doesn't matter what tool. Okay. So let's write one, right? As we talked about, I want to, as a site administrator, I want to log in. Right, and I want to log in through by providing a valid ID and password. So if I want to write this test case, exactly how would I write it? Okay. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and like save something. I'm going to do is so I'm going to say this is site administrator valid login. So project name, I know this is our flown. Now, if you look into the detailed design document, right, there's one of the module called security that they've identified that that's going to do that. So any credential validation type of thing is going to fall under security. So I'm going to say this is part of the security module. Okay, then we can just put the logistical information. Let's say I can do one. This is not there. That's not there. I'm going to put a high priority because if you can't log in, you cannot perform any test in that system, right? So I should be able to log in into the system. Then I'm just going to say test case 1, that's T01. Okay. I'm going to say I'm going to say title is site administrator valid login test case. Okay. Now let's talk about the precondition. What should be true in the system? Right. So if I'm not provisioned, my ID and a password is not provisioned as site administrator. Can I log in as site administrator? We cannot, right? So the precondition should be is a valid user account with ID and password is C. Okay. So the precondition is that ID and a password that I'll define it into the data section exists in the system, and it has a site administration credentials. Right. So that's a precondition. If it is not true, doesn't matter whether I have a valid ID or a password, right? I can, even if I log in, I'm not logged in as site admin. Right. So everybody understand this precondition? Good. All right. In this case, I'm not going to have any dependence because everything is kind of defined within the bounds of the system, right? I'm not going to do anything else. So this is the detailed summary. Explains that what is gonna happen in this test case, right? So this one is gonna validate that I, as a site administrator, can log in into the system as long as I have a valid ID and a password. Right? So the title is a short description. This one gives it in detail. So anybody reading it, this test case at any given point can clearly understand what happens. Right? So now let's talk through the steps. So let's say if I tell you that like it's go and log in into a system, what is the first thing you will do? Open the browser. What do you do with the browser after opening the browser? What is our phone? Type in the URL where the system is, right? So my first step is I'm going to say in the browser. So this is, so I'm saying I'm going to go into the browser. Right? I'm going to navigate to the Airflow page by putting into the URL. And it says I'll define that URL in the data section in a moment. Right? And the most important thing is taking some action by clicking enter, right? If I just type it, the URL and don't do anything, there's no action I've taken it. The action takes it is when I click it and then I go. Okay. So all I needed is an Airflow. I'm just going to do. Right, so that's one data piece I needed. Okay. And we'll go in a moment. Right, we'll talk through it, how to get the data. Okay. When I do that, what should be the expected results? The home page is displayed in the browser, right? Good. Okay, what is the next step I would do?
Type in username, password.
Okay. Let's be consistent, right? We said ID, right? Okay, let's say I have user ID password and then it's somewhere like it's kind of click login, so you click on login. Okay. But what user ID I'm going to type in, right? What is valid though? You don't know what is valid. Right, you have to specify it, right? So I know I need to specify user ID and the password. Okay. So you're able to see it as I go through. Okay. So what should I expect it?
The Airflow homepage.
That's it here, the same homepage.
It has to go to the site administrator login section.
So it should display the homepage for the site administrator when it's successfully logged in. Right? But is that the first thing happens? What is the first thing happens?
Successfully log.
They log in successfully, right? So Okay. Good. What's next? What do I do after that?
Site administration should be able to assess this information.
Wrong password and then. Give a negative
Negative
space.
result and expected results too.
What's that again?
Wouldn't each negative result and expected results too unsuccessful login?
Okay. What are exactly we trying to do the testing? Okay. Don't mix other test cases in that test case.
Okay.
So
Okay.
each case,
So I'm doing only this.
so each of this will be separate.
Each will be a separate test case.
Check for the value. So now you can open up the application.
Okay. That's why it's important, right? I say it's like it's don't get an assumption.
Should it mention the site administrator's name and some kind of welcome message?
But isn't that the same thing when my homepage is displayed? I don't know what type of messages will display the homepage. But if I go back into my design document. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, if I go into my design document. Right? What happens here? Right? Let's say site administrator, when they log in. This page get displayed, right? That's all they do. At this point. Am I testing any of these features or functionality? No. What is the scope of my requirement?
Only for
Then
the
log in.
login.
So what is my next steps? I'm done, right? Because I'm already successfully logged in. And I exactly know what is should be expected when I successfully log in. So my test case is simple, it's just 2 steps. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna enter the password in that. This is what will happen. And then at this point, I'm done with that particular requirement in the test scenarios that I've identified. Okay, this is a simple test case, right? It's not a complex, right? If you're doing it like it's do a login and trying to create a credit application, it'll be a lot more bigger. Right? But in this case, I'm done with exactly the goal that I've identified for this. Right? So I know I don't need to write any more steps. Right? I'm done with this. Now I need to worry about getting the data. Right? So if you'll Herschel, is the URL still the same or we changed it?
Oh, we changed it.
Okay. So what is the URL? So Herschel is going to give us a URL. So that's where you talk with your development team and says, hey, what is the URL? What is the site administrator user ID password? And you document that. Right. In this case, if you go, the Herschel will give us different URL. But within your document, you have a page, and that's in your folder also, which talks about what is the user ID and a password for each one, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy and say, hey, for user ID, here is the user ID and password is string. Okay, that's what they've done it. For now, let me just use this thing as the URL. Okay. So this is my URL. This is my user ID. This is my password. Okay. So that's what that's all the data that I ask it, and then step that I'm going to use it. Okay. Now you'll be able to connect all the pieces together, right? So in the precondition, you say that everything that was defined in data section exists. Do I have that? right? I have ID and a password. So as long as there is a user ID or S training and the password training exists in the system, I know the precondition is going to meet. Okay, then I identify the browser URL. So I identify that. This is where the user will go to put in there. And then within the login form, they will put S training and training and click on login. So that all of the data that I needed to execute successfully my test case, it's here now. Okay. So then I go to the next section, post condition. What is going to be true in the system? If I successfully execute this test case, what will be true in the system? Okay, one person at a time. I can't hear 15 voices. Okay, so what are you saying?
Successfully login.
Well, can or so be careful with the wordings.
Site administrator should be on the admin.
Right. So the key thing is this case site at this point, we don't know whether they're on the homepage or not, right? The system is within the system, site administrator is logged in successfully. That is the state of the system. Right. So at that time, you can say site administrator has successfully logged into the system. Okay. Now you're right, Rohini, like it's right. They will be at the homepage, right? But even if I close the homepage, from a system point of view, think about it, right? In the backend system, the site administrator is still logged in. Till they log out, then only you can say, hey, I'm done with my system. Right. So at this point, all I can guarantee is that this person is successfully logged into the system if I look at the state of the system. Okay. And don't need any notes. Okay. So that's your test case. Okay. One test case. If I need to write another one exactly like this, but with this is invalid ID. Third one, I would write with invalid password. Right. In this both case, it will fail to log in. Right. No data is that means I'm not providing user ID or a password. Well, what should happen? Right. So you need to identify all those three things as you go through it.
While writing for invalid ID, should we include the browser open case?
Yeah, it's remember.
It has to be added to everything.
So think of this. Repeatable and predictable. Right? If I kind of do this over and over again. If I do these steps over and over again, can I guarantee it will give me the exact same results? It will, right? Because I mean, every time I'm providing this user ID, can I get all of the steps?
Yeah.
Right? So the most important is repeatable and predictable, right? As long as my site administrator is provisioned in the system, they have the same ID and a password as I define in the test case. I should be able to get exact same result every time, successfully log in. Not only I can repeat the steps, but I'll also get the same results. So that's the key. Right? Because I identify precondition. Now, if you want to do a lot of automation, so that's where typically people do it, is write additional step to log out. Okay, so then you can continuously do it and you're not leaving any of the system resources consumed, right? Because you may have put a limitation of how many times a given user can log in into the system. Any questions online?
No.
So this is the whole process that you go through. You take a requirement, you break it down into what are the possible things you need to test it for. And then for every possible thing, you identify the test cases for it. Okay, let's do one more exercise together. Okay, so one of the requirement in the managed dealership, and I'll pull in a moment, go into that requirement page. Okay, so this is the requirement. We go to the page. So this is one of the requirements, right? The user must be able to search existing dealer by dealer name, address, etc. And this is part of the managed dealerships. So that's my context, that I should be able to do all those things. Okay. So let's talk about the tree itself, right? So how would I take this requirement now and break it into the pieces so that I identify how many test cases I need to run, right? So I'm going to build a tree for it, right?
Isn't this information incomplete?
Okay, so let's talk through it. So can you apply 3CNT? Yes, no, and you're saying it's no.
No.
What is incomplete? So what questions you will have it for this?
They have to be specific that what should be the search, like what are the other etc. means in
Okay.
this case.
So we're gonna play the role. Herschel is gonna be our business user who has provided this requirement, right? And Herschel, yesterday we talked, you'd want to take out the ETC out, right? So that's what the discussion we had it yesterday. So it says, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take the ETC out. Are you guys good now with 3CNT? Everybody good?
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about it, right? What are the different things? Now I know dealer name and address, right? So one of the possible searches, I'm gonna do it. Right? Is by name, right? Okay. And then second one is by address. Let's say I do it. Second one is by address. Is this good enough? One that? No search data, right? Let's say if I do a no data. This is good? 3 cases?
We need to separate out the name into different categories.
Like what?
First name.
Like last name or.
Okay.
No, dealer name will be only one name, there won't be person.
That's what the name of it.
Address will be into street.
So let's talk first. Let's stick to the name. You said first name, last name. You said the dealer name won't be first name, last name. Why?
Because the dealer name is not a personal name, it's the
Yeah,
name of the
it's
dealership.
right. It's the name of the dealership. It's not individual. So the name is one. Okay. What are the other things? Within the name, what are the different scenarios we need to think?
Numbers, letters.
So if it's,
So my dealer name, there's no restriction. It could have numbers, it could have letters, right?
I mean, if it's a franchise, then they have our numbers.
Again,
Location.
remember the franchise number, it's a different requirement. Right? In this case, I'm saying I should be able to search only by dealer name or by address. It doesn't say franchise number.
If it's a name, we can do the search in part of. Should be able to.
So you said partial, right?
If we can start
Okay,
typing, we should be able to.
so here I will give partial. Or I would do a full name. So let's walk through an example. If I say Germain of Honda. That's a full name. If I search on that, I'll get that specific. If I search on Germain, will I get the Germain of Honda also?
It should be able to list out, right, that starts with.
It should be list out, okay? So
So if a prompt,
remember earlier I said, don't assume. What does that mean? All of you are assuming that, hey, I could do a partial, I could do a full name. Nobody has talked to the user. Is that what you want? Right? You all thought that, hey, that's a cool feature. I'm going to give it to user whether he wants or not. Think about it, you're building a house and a contractor decides what should be the features of your houses instead of you deciding it. Right? You're going to be happy writing the checks to a contractor, right? So Herschel, can you enlighten this? Are you anticipating the system when they search dealer by dealer name that you wanted the entire dealer name or you're okay with the partial?
I would like the partial search.
Also, do you want both? Okay,
Well, partial would search, if I type in GER, then it should return.
Okay. so any partial, okay. So what he pointed it out is if you do partial, it is also a full also, right? So it'll still get the result. Now let's say when you do a GER, let's say I'm doing a partial. Is that you're expecting the results will bring it back? The things that matches that partial string when they start with it, or it should be anywhere in the name.
It should be anywhere.
So that's an important, right? So what he said now, I'm gonna just do that, right? He said I can do a partial anywhere. Okay. This is important because when I get the results, I need to validate it. Right? That's why it's important to have understanding. Okay. The other aspect is you mentioned that there should be a dealer name and address that they're able to search by. Do they have to provide both? Or it's one or the other, or at least one?
So give you the scenario.
So,
If I type in GER, then it should search both user name as well as the address information and return me all the reasons. So if the straight includes GER, I should see that dealer in the.
okay. So the address also partial, but can you hang on for a moment
Yeah.
till I understand? What I'm trying to still understand it is when you say it needs to be done by dealer name and address. So when I'm doing a search, do I have to provide both or one or the other?
The way I see it is user will type in GER
Right?
and the result should include both dealer name and address information. So if the dealer name has GER in the name, then it should be listed out in the result. If the address includes GER, it should be listed out in the result.
Okay. So that's a frequent. So you're saying it is when I get into the search as an input, I have only one place to define the input.
That is,
I don't have two places to define input. Did everybody got it? There's only one search. And then depending on what you put there, it should go across both the name and address and pull everything that matches.
so if you do a markup screen, it will include one text box, one search button.
So it'll be like this. Right? And whatever they put it in here. Okay. All right. Now, there was another question around the address. You just mentioned the street name. What additional criteria of the address that I need to be able to search through it?
Street name and zip code, those are the two things that are important.
Okay. What about city, state? Do I worry about it?
RSCD.
Okay. Anything else I should worry about from the address?
No,
Okay. So let me rephrase it. If I provide a search simple string. I'm gonna do this. We're gonna do name has only one partial thing. So as long as whatever the criteria specify, it matches one of the four things,
Yep.
you bring it up.
that is,
Okay. What happens if a user decides not to enter anything and click on search?
I mean, system should restrict them, show some type of error message.
Okay. So in the scenario when there is no data. Show error, and then error should tell it that they require something.
That's the IT can decide.
All right. So in the context of all the information that Herschel just talked in, and I talked with it, I'm trying to capture all of them here, including the picture at the bottom. Do you feel that with this, now you have a clarity in terms of is it complete, correct, consistent, and testable?
Not still clear about just the street name or street name and visit.
Yes, so looking at the markup screen, you should be able to basically see from that viewpoint that think of it, I'm a user, and I'm coming to this screen searching for a dealer shop, right? Existing dealer shop. And I'm trying to find a dealer by just entering street name or city, or it could be anything. You know, I just type in GER. So what the system should do is search all those four fields and show me all the inclusive results.
Okay. So that's a good question. So when they say all the inclusive results, are you expecting a list like Google?
Yeah.
Here's
so
everything, right?
anything that matches in those four fields with the name of GER, I should see that in the search.
So I get the list. And then do you know what all the list should have? Just the name and address as the summary?
No, you should have name, address, city, state, zip, because then the user can easily determine who the right dealer is from that standpoint.
Okay, so there's four pieces of information.
That is,
Okay,
and franchise.
okay. You had a question?
No,
Christie?
you pretty much answered the question because, normally when you go into search something, even when you go, so many things come up, for example, like GR, when you
Right.
see another GR in the same city or in another state,
Mhm.
so I would think it would stick to kind of much.
Okay. So there's five pieces of information and it's a list. Okay,
So I have a question.
Yes.
The name part, if some user gives a full name, that time also it will display the
Yeah.
service.
yeah, so think about it. If I search Jer or Jermaine, it still will give me the same results, right? In fact, the more specific I am, the smaller the list is. But it'll still match it. So that's why I eliminated it. Yeah, I don't need to worry about partial or full because partial is part of it. And as long as he said that anywhere, that's another key, right? It's not the one with starting with it. It could be anywhere is the key. Now, do you have enough information now? Any other questions that you have it that makes you feel that you don't know 3C and T?
We have only positive this scenarios.
There is no data, right?
If he spells the name of the dealer in the wrong way. It's
So here's the question, right? How do you know whether it's a right or wrong name of the dealer?
if he-
It's a combination of text characters, right? So you never know what is right or wrong.
there is
So
no-
if you know whether Dilip is the right name or not, don't know.
If your test data is incorrect, you won't be able to test anything, right?
Yeah.
Because that's your data. If you input something wrong, you're not gonna find it.
Right, so that's the key, right? So again, you can't say it is a name is wrong because you have no prediction of how each of the dealer will name themselves. Right, it's all business names. Can you guarantee that here is the comprehensive list of business name and there is no business name exists outside that error? Can you guarantee it? You cannot.
So this one we are doing it in app loan
Yes,
web page, right?
Right.
So if that dealer name doesn't exist, if it is like instead of even I'm a dealer user, instead of putting G or by accident I put GRE, it should throw us like there is no name, such name exists, right?
well, so hang on to that for a moment. Okay, so that's a different than a correct name or wrong name, okay? What you're talking about it is, what if I don't find anything matching? Because I don't know whether GER or GRE, which one is right name. It's not about the right name. It's about, did I find anything which matches that criteria?
Now,
When you go to Google to search it, does Google tell you exactly what is right and what is wrong? You just type whatever you want and Google will bring it as long as it matches that. Right? It doesn't make any judgment it's right or wrong. All it just says whether I found it anything matching or I didn't find anything matching.
But Google does make an assumption because you're not.
That's a fuzzy search, right? That's a fuzzy search. You can do that, right? But he said that he doesn't want fuzzy search. He just wants anywhere in the function.
Matching particular.
Right, matching particular thing. And otherwise he would have said, hey, read my mind and tell me exactly what I did misspelled it. Right? I have yet to find a system which will read my mind. Even Google, when it gives a suggestion and says, what the hell are you thinking?
So,
Right.
and when you are writing your detailed test case, right, that's why the test data becomes very important for you. So you want to make sure your test data is also there in the system,
Right.
and you are executing your test case.
Right, so think of this way. So this is a one view. Now, other view you need to do it is, you need to think about the scenarios. Right? When I search on something, and if it does, there's no result shown for that particular search. Does it mean my search worked? Because there's nothing in the data? Or does it mean my search failed? Even though there is a data, search failed to work as expected, and there's a bug in the system. Right? You need to think of those scenarios as part of this. Right? So within this search, right, I will also do additional criteria. Let's say I take in a name, right? There is at least one match in the system with that, right? Or there is no match in the system. I have to execute both to prove it. My search works, because if data doesn't resolve, and if there was something matching in the system, that means there's a bug. Search did not work. So I have to prove that case. And the only way I can prove it is by running this two different scenarios. Right? And the way I run the scenarios is say, hey, you know what, I'm going to do a Germain Toyota in the system with one dealer, and I will put GER and I will search it and I'll make sure I'll get the results. Right? And then I'll make sure, let's say there is a some other string, let's say dealer is another string, and then there is nothing in the system that matches any one of those criteria. And when I search it, it doesn't show me any results. Right? So I have to do both matching and non-matching results. Yeah.
So what you are saying is for partial, right? If you have the name, you will have those two additional leads.
Right. Yeah. But this will be true across all four of them. Right. Right. So that's why I can put it that, right? So this will be true for each one of them. So I can literally take this particular thing, add here, right? Do the same thing. Right? I'll do same thing, 1 plus or no such, 1 plus or no such street name, 1 plus no such street name. Right? No such city, and then city matching. Okay, so now my leaves, right? So let me say. So now my leaves are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so I'm gonna see if I can write it with a different one. So this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So possibly 9 test cases I need to write it in order to validate this requirement works completely as expected. Okay.
And searches are complex. I mean, you will have 10, 20 test cases on searches. That's very many.
Just right.
So, in case of no date of search, did you assume what kind of message you want to put in, or like, do you have to go back to the check?
We don't need to go to user. What he said is like, it's, hey, as long as there's some indicator. So you usually converse with that. And what I just said is that it will show an error message indicating that, hey, you need to provide something in the search term. That's all I'm saying. Now, exact what message, that can be done working closely with that. But I know if in my expected results, if I see it, do I see it a message indicating that something is required in the search field? Exactly what the text itself, that you can always work with the designer to say what exactly the text you're going to produce.
Will it be available in the data, sorry, designing documents like what they are?
So typically,
coding-
depending on what time they are ready, they can give you the detail, right? But when you design the test cases, it's sufficient for you to say, hey, I'm going to give you an expected behavior that should show some message indicating that's required. And that is sufficient, right?
What if, like, you know, the case scenario like we had here, you had a communication of partial. Like you specified it at what point in real life, like, you know, like if you see that the specifications you receive, they are missing those information, like when can you actually request that feedback? And get all the missing information, because it seems kind of like messy, you know, it's like you're getting all the specs and requirements and you go through them. It seems to be sufficient at some point, but when you get to the case and like, you know, you have to actually create the cases and go through the possible scenarios, you realize that you're missing that information. How do you get that feedback from the stakeholder?
So typically that's where the practice comes in play, right? So you try to do it initially as soon as you read the requirements, you identify like, hey, I'm missing this, do that communication, send it, right? But that doesn't mean that's the only time you can do it, right? As you go through it, if you figured it out, hey, I still need some additional information or clarification, you go back and communicate it. When you're working in agile world, right, specifically, that's where most of the companies are shifting into it. Your user will be accessible to you all the time. So throughout the development cycle, the 2 weeks or 4 week iteration, whatever you're doing, you have access, right? And you don't have to have a meeting, right? So like it's right now, Harshal is present, right? But you don't have that. You can just put together a quick email that says, hey, can you give me all this clarification? I'm trying to understand it. Are there possible scenarios? Is this what's going to happen? And you can send them and they can quickly respond back and then get through it, right? But the key thing is that what you looked at is I didn't assume anything. I asked him, right, what exactly you want? And that's the most important thing is, right? Because if you assume certain things and you write test cases, what's going to happen is you build it and say everything is passed. You go to the user says, this is not what I asked. Why did you assume that? Why didn't you talk to me? What's going to happen? You have to redo the whole thing. That's why it's an important part. Don't make an assumptions, have the conversation and get that clarity from the user. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so this is what we're going to do it. Actually, already sent it out, right?
I sent you, but let me just put it quickly and share it to online folks.
Let me. Are you logged into this thing?
Yep.
Is this the one?
Yep. I'll give you a copy.
Okay.
It is doing.
It's not giving me an option to hide this thing.
You think if you click the top left button
Which one?
on the very top left, three lines. If you push.
This one?
No, on the left side. Of the Gmail, yeah, if you push it, it will happen.
Ah, thank you. All right, so this is what you're gonna do. Over the next 30 minutes, in the group where your tables are, you're gonna take these 3 requirements. You're gonna build a tree. Similar to this. And identify how many leaves you're gonna have it. Those are the test cases. You're gonna do that.
Maybe you can give 15 minutes each for the requirement or.
I want 10 minutes each, 30 minutes total as a group. You're gonna do through it. And you're gonna build it for each one of them. So online, there are 2 of you, so Trevor and Anjali. What you're gonna do it is, I'm gonna put the, let me see if I can put you both into the room. You're gonna give me a moment. I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can build. Harshal, did they have it in the chat?
I believe.
Go ahead and put it in the chat. So Harshal is putting the requirement in the chat so you can have access to that. And I'm gonna go ahead and create a breakout room for both of you. Okay, in a moment, I'll move both of you in that breakout room. So you should be able to share and talk through it. I'll give 30 minutes to do that. Or shall it's going to send you also in that room. Okay.
That's why it always engaged. Yeah.
That's a third. Actually, I missed the second.
So Trevor, you need to join the room that I've created. And Harshal is sending out the information in that chat. Okay, so he has sent an attachment. And then for the class, I'm going to continue to share. Zoom recording. All right. So what we're going to do it is so Anjali, what I'm going to do it, since you are the only one online, actually people draw it on the board here, and then I'll replicate that on the screen for you as we go it. Okay, so let's pick it up. Who wants to come? As I say, now the rule is, as I keep telling my kids also as they get like through the teenager years, you have 2 choices. Either you volunteer or you get volunteer. Pick your choice. All right. So whichever group you want to come in, you have 2 choices. You get pick it, or Harshal and I pick you. Who wants to do the first one? Come here, draw on the paper or on the board.
Can I start?
So
Can I start online?
say that again, Anjali.
Can I start?
So Hank, you want to start? Okay, let's pick it up there. Do you have a screen share?
I do not have anything I have drawn or something, but I can just explain that what I have seen or what is the scenario that I am thinking about it, if it's
Well,
good.
why don't you do one thing? You have it on a picture on a piece of paper?
No, I haven't drawn anything. It's just like, I have just think about the scenarios. If it's
Yeah,
possible.
I would like to see the picture, right? To me, the picture is worth 1,000 words. So even if you explain it, think about it, just the first example we did in an exercise case. Where
Mhm.
what was the business problem?
Mhm.
Everybody's gonna go like that. So I would like it picture. I'm a visual person. So can you put it on the piece of paper? As you go through it. And then take a picture and send it to Herschel and I can pull it up here.
Okay,
Right. Because I want to make sure we all are on the same page with that. So while you're doing that. I want somebody else in the class to come here and pick it. Okay,
Can I do the first one or she doing it?
whoever wants to, let's come over here. Let's do the first one.
I have it on my iPad. too.
Oh, you have it? Can you just email it to Herschel? I can pull it up here.
I don't have Wi-Fi on my iPad. Is there Wi-Fi here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So. Which one is it?
I was suggesting you can just draw it in the computer.
Oh. Okay, let's do that. Here's what I'm gonna do, okay?
Oh, okay.
Let me put the first requirement, Herschel. Username is auto-generated. We'll put that.
Oh, thank you.
Wi-Fi password is the same Internet all caps. It's the Internet student Wi-Fi. We will get you tomorrow having wherever you guys.
Can we ask specification questions before we start to draw the? Tree?
So the way we're gonna do it is completely different, right? Now you all have to learn how you work together as a team. If one group is doing it, give them an opportunity to finish there.
No,
And then question.
First name.
As you go through it, right? Think of it this way, if you have too many questions now. Or did you draw it in the tree?
We did.
Okay, so hang on to that. Let's get one at a time. So why don't you just use the pen and paper and draw it here?
Me?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
That's right here. Fine. So. There's an app.
Oh, okay.
Just draw it in there, and then everybody can see it. Hang on, did I share the screen? Screen is shared, yeah. So Anjali can see it also as you go through it.
So you want me to start with the tree first?
Yeah, just the tree. That's all I want
Oh.
for this particular thing.
Oh.
Hang on.
તેજસ અમારે મોકલવાનું છે કેમ ની?
So first name.
And then,
Now, this is you all came together as a group, right? That's what this view.
well, we didn't go through the tree, was started like writing the whole, like.
Okay,
I
remember I
guess
said, all I wanted was tree, not
Not
the case, this case. We're not there yet.
Then we made it misunderstood then, because we started making the whole thing right away. Oops.
Now,
I guess I'm confused with the tree.
આવી રીતના ડાયગ્રામ મેં એને કીધું કે હું સ્ટાર્ટ કરતા કે તો મને ફોટો પાડીને મોકલાવે ને હું શેર કરા. ત્યાં ચાલશે?
hey, Anjali, can you put yourself on the mute? Okay. All right. So tell me, like, it's at least, what do you mean by no name, first name, last name?
Well, I guess like the first name and the last name would be like a positive cases, right? And then no name would be like, you would get a need, like.
No, so do you understand the requirement?
Yeah, first name, last name, right?
No, what is the requirement says? Remember the user ID? that gets generated based on the information from first name and last name. There's no separate first name, no separate last name.
So the username is generated, username is not generated.
Right. So this is not what it is. Okay, what about any other team? Who else has done it? Why don't you come here? And
I know. Now the time limit makes sense.
Partial, I doubt whether they asked any information, so we are overthinking.
So we have a partial category. That means abbreviated first name and expanded last name, expanded last name, and abbreviated first
Or
name.
it's just
And we
like,
needed to ask.
if,
what is the question?
that was the
That was
question.
the question.
What is the question? Is here. Answer the question.
I mean, so I think you guys are diverting a little bit.
I feel that is not.
What is the context of the requirement? Can you guys explain me, any of you, whoever has it, when
When does this thing happen?
When this thing will happen, right? This
When you have more
requirement-
than one person with the same.
When does this requirement come into the picture?
During signing up for registration, initial registration,
Hang on,
initial registration of the user,
which user?
any users.
Okay, this is the user creation, right? So it's part of manage user. I'm creating a new user in the system.
Yes.
That's when this happens. Everybody understand the context? Okay, now what does this requirement say? Read it carefully.
Based on last name and first.
So what does it mean?
So the big matter is the first name, last name. If I'm creating a new user, if I'm importing something, does it really matter? It's a partial name or anything,
No.
right? I need to create a user in order for this requirement to come in the picture. And that's one. Right?
So visualize, right? So I'm in some sort of a create user screen or capability, right? And they're asking the user all the information, what is your first name, last name, and that. And based on that, the system is automatically generating the username. That's what it is. Username is auto-generated. How it is auto-generated? Based on the last name and the first name of the person for which you're trying to create an account. Okay. So help me understand which one of this scenario you're gonna. Because I already provided, like, it's everything is gonna be based on first name, last name. So there's no difference between this or this, right? Is there a difference? Yeah. So how would you draw the tree? What do you define a valid first name and a last name for me? Anybody could have anything on the first name. It's not like a state where hey, it's one of the 50 valid ones. Right? How do you go about it?
Should match the spelling.
It's an auto-generated. Nobody's writing a misspelling or typing it. Whatever you enter in the system is what system uses it. They don't care whether you misspelled or not.
So would it just be first name, last name, and no, and you take off the no data, because it generates no matter what you.
I know. You guys tell me.
I think it's just be.
Can I tell them, can I say what I think?
Sure.
Or like, so it would be, is it pulling the correct last name and first name? Is it bringing it up or not generating it? Generating it or not generating it? Those are the two things that I would be looking.
Not altogether, right? Because if it's not generating, it's a failed case, right? So I don't need to separate, right? It's a simple, did it generate it or no? Yes or no, right? If it's no, it failed. Yes, it should pass. Right?
I have a question. If it is auto-generated, right, there should be specification how the system should generate the username.
So did you read through the other documents?
Did you read through all the requirements in the same section? But that's not the question. Question is, how would you validate this particular requirement?
Yeah.
If you are a user, if you are a tester.
So maybe with just the first name, last name, and then the no data, would that be the only two breakdown in that case?
Generated or not generated, that's all. I
Because
need.
it gets auto-generated anyway with the information that is given.
Okay. So walk me through it so let's walk through the no data scenario first. Tell me what is gonna happen. What do you mean by no data?
So you don't put in the first name or the last.
So if I
name.
don't put in first name, last name, and I try to create a user, right?
So it'll give an error.
Should its system even try to auto generate at that time? It should just say, hey, you're missing this pieces of information. If you're missing it, why would even I kick it a requirement to generate an auto stuff? Because I don't have that information altogether. Right? So in this case, in this scenario, no data doesn't make sense because you're not inputting it. All it just saying is that, hey, when you're trying to provide and create a user screen, based on the required information, because if you look at it, the data required into the design document, first name and last name is a required document. If it's not that, you're not even going to allow them to create a user. This is as part of the creation of the users, right? So if I already have the first name and last name, this thing is not matter. Right?
But shouldn't you have a negative, just to make sure that the positive is working?
Okay, so let's say it's, if you, let's say for a moment that you kicked off without no data. That's an error message. Good. What about the other two?
We can make it as one capability, whether
Yeah.
it generates or not. It generates.
So, okay, is that the only scenario? You have to worry about any other scenario?
So in the first name and the last name are the same.
Yes.
So as the specification says, first time it has to give the,
If it's first name and last name is same, does it matter?
So in order to generate it, auto-generate it, the data should be available in the system for the user, for the first name and last name.
Checking on that. Anjali, do you have anything else? Because I think it's, you're still not on the track. So Anjali, you have anything?
I have sent the picture if you can.
Okay. Username is auto-generated based on first name, last name.
For me, this requirement is not clear, right? It says based on the first name and last name, you have to generate the name, but how? Like, do you want the combined name? Do you need just, for example, my name is Anjali Surti. You want Surti Anjali, Anjali Surti, or the first name and last name combined? What do you want? So I will ask the BA that what do you want to create the name? And the second one is like, if the name is already existent, then it says the error message that, hey, you have this customer name or username. And then if you want to create another user, how do you create the another user? Like, do you want to add something in that so that you can differentiate the two different users?
Okay. So I think it's, you have more questions, what I won't consider as beliefs, right? So, but you have some valid questions. So here's what I want to do. Okay. So let's walk through this one. Okay. Let's take an example, right? So the first name is Bob. Let's say user's last name is Smith. Okay. So this is what the user, you're in the process of creating users. This is what you provided first name, this is what you provided last name, right? So the rule is auto-generated based on a first name and last name, right? So let's, first, do you understand it is, what it means by based on this, right? So Herschel, question for you. So there are multiple ways you could use the first name and last name to auto-generate things, right? Simple thing, you can concatenate first name and last name. That's one possibility. Other scenario is B Smith. The third one is Smith B. What are you anticipating it? How should it system generate that?
Okay, so the calculation is not given, right, in the requirements anywhere, basically for the user management, right? So that was a clarification question, I think, from SBA and I guess
Right.
you guys. Okay, so I would go with the B Smith.
Okay.
To take the first word, first letter of the first name and then whatever the remaining last name characters are, just to keep it simple.
What if I have the same, two users with the same first name?
So it will increment and put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like that, and then. But the first user will always get B in the last name.
So this is the rules, right? That based on what you say that is the first rule is if the user doesn't exist, use the first name, first letter, and the last name to auto-generate it. If user existed. Yeah, it's on. If it exists, then the second rule also kicks in. It's first name, first letter plus last name plus the increment. Right? Now, by default, it will always start with 1.
No,
It will be without that. If the first one is, there is nothing in that. Okay. All right. So did everybody understand the requirements now? It's that the clarification. Okay. So if I do that, I'm gonna do this then. Okay. So simple rule is none exist and at least one exist. Right? So I need to kick in these 2 rules, right? So my first test case is I'll try to it's find a user which doesn't exist in the system. And while I'm trying to create that, I want to make sure that does the system generate B Smith for that person. Okay, so that's first scenario. Second scenario is Bob Smith already exists in the system. I'm trying to add a new Bob Smith. So it should say it's B Smith 1. Right? I would also, actually, here's the way I would do it. Okay. I would do this thing already exists. Already exists back into 2. 1 and 1 plus. Okay. Here's the reason why I would do it 2 more additional 1 and 1 plus. The first time a second one comes Bob Smith, I want to make sure it says B Smith 1. The second time comes in, you want to make sure it shows B Smith 2, right? Because I need to make sure this auto increment is also working. Right? Everybody with me? So in order to test this requirement, I'll need to have 1, 2, and 3 test cases. And that's going to give me an ability to say, does the system auto-generate? 2, when it auto-generates, does it auto-generate correctly? If the user already exists, and then is the incrementing working properly? Okay, so those are the 3 scenarios that I would use it for this thing. Any questions online or in the class?
Can I ask you if it's recorded? Because it just.
It is. It is recorded, yeah. It is recorded. See, there's about the Whenever this thing is flashing, it is in the recording.
Okay, it's just.
Okay. Clear? Second one is lender is required for credit application. Let me just read it. All right. Who wants to draw this one? The tree. All I'm looking is tree. I'm not looking at the test cases. But then we have somebody coming from this table come in, and then I would like that table to do the third one.
Go ahead, it's fine. Even if
It's okay.
it's
It's
not,
again.
perfect, it's okay.
It's sharing your thought. What do you have it? But just go ahead and write it on the screen itself. Yeah, so you can just go ahead and just write it on the screen, just write it in mute. Can you walk through it? Let's talk through it, right? So, yeah, talk through it. So when you say ID available and not available, what ID, whose ID?
Before, can you guys explain where this requirement, what is the context of this requirement?
Sure.
When this requirement comes into play?
So it's in the credit application, while filling up the credit application.
Okay,
Okay.
and
So-
who is doing the work?
A dealer is doing it.
Dealer,
Dealer
Yeah.
is trying to submit a credit application,
Mhm,
and at the same time, they is basically trying to pick the lender,
mhm.
basically, so that lender can approve of the lender. Okay, so that's the context.
So while filling up the credit application, we will check if the ID is available for that lender. So I mean, each dealer should have a particular lender available. Assigned to the dealer shop.
It could be many. It
Yeah,
doesn't
there
have to
could
be
be-
one-to-one.
Mhm. So we have to pick one of them, and if the ID is available for one of the lender, if not available, and if ID is available, if it's valid or not valid.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fine.
So what are you trying to prove here? I mean, what are you trying to validate? This requirement, what exactly you are trying to validate that is working on?
If the lender is available or not for the particular dealer shop.
It's not about dealer shop.
Mhm.
It's the credit application.
Oh, sorry, credit application.
So it available meaning,
But yes, everything, application for one person, that should be matches, that is the ID, like, that person ID is matching with other, whatever we are submitting.
Okay.
The person we are submitting.
All right, so hold on to that. You had something to say.
I was thinking maybe we need more information on this, lender is required for credit application.
So hang on to that, asking more information. Let's make sure we understand that. And then Okay, so when you say ID available, walk me through it. Are you thinking it? What is I'm a dealer user. Think through the scenarios, right? I'm a dealer user. I'm creating a credit application, right? And as part of it is it's asking me the lender is required for that. Now, where does the ID come in picture?
Every user should be having a separate ID, right? So my name should come under, there will be some ID, there will be no waiting time with.
Okay, no, but whose ID is this? Is it
Lender's
lender?
ID. It's lender's
Okay,
ID,
so it's
yeah.
a lender's ID.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you were saying something.
Yeah,
like
that's what
it's a lender ID? Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So help me understand when you say ID available versus not available. What do you mean by not available?
Am I able to? When I put in, is it going to take that number?
Ah, okay.
So you are thinking
That's what
somebody
I-
will be manually.
Manually
typing in?
entering it?
I think, because I'm going to ask you a question, like, is that going to be a select box or something where I could put? So that's a question. for
That's a
you.
design thing.
That's a design thing, but
It's not the requirement thing. It's a design thing.
No. If it's going, if it's, I could select none, right? If it's a select box, I could select none and then go.
It is a required.
you are
When
trying to
it's
prove that.
required, like, you can say-
Think of it as you're validating the system works to fulfill that capability. That's what you're trying to do. Okay,
So I could go with blank, right?
So lender
You
name is
cannot
not
go with
available
blank
there.
because it's required. You cannot go further if you don't have a lender.
As a tester, you are trying to prove that the system is not allowing me
to save anything without that.
without selecting the land.
Christy, you had something? No?
So the requirement is if I select the lender, I should be able to submit the application.
Not if I.
Not that.
select
That must be-
it.
No, I select the lender, then only you allow me to.
No, when I submit the application and forcing it that there is always a lender associated with it.
So
That
it's
is
not
what-
checking the lender validity or lender, whether they are active or not.
So it's gonna
like,
be lender is
Okay,
chosen,
hang on.
and if it's not
Fine.
chosen, it has to
Okay.
be back.
All right, so let's pause on it. Let's pause on it. You had a question saying the requirement is not complete. Tell me about
It
that.
doesn't mention what is to be done with the credit application there. Is it like a submission or is it like,
But that's in the context, right? So you have to look at it where that requirement is. It's part of the credit supplication functionality. So it is part of it. You always look into where the context is for this one,
Do it
right?
on the list of lenders.
But what is, hang on to that. So what is the other question? Is that the only thing you added? You think the requirement's not complete. Tell me what else you're thinking it's not complete.
no, I just felt that it needed more information to say.
Like what information you need more? You have to be explicit, right? You can't just say to the business user and say, I need more information. You have to explain what more information you need.
Lender is required for credit application to be either approved or denied.
It is not approved or denied. This is at the submission process.
To access the application.
It's a submission process, right? So this is when a dealer user, that's what she identified in the context, right? As a dealer user, I'm in the process of creating a credit application. And I'm gonna submit it. While creating the application, all it just says that I must provide a lender for that.
So in the application itself, there is no information required for a lender. In the.
Are you sure?
In the
Yeah,
PDF.
the lender.
Are you 100% sure?
So
I'm 100% sure. I've read it this over many times.
Are we creating the
So I'm
credit?
thinking, so since the land is required for credit applications, as a requirement, is it not supposed to be notified? Going to get a notification?
Okay, you're going in a different path. Hang on to that.
I would
What is that?
think-
And then I'll.
I would. The existing one that was pre-saved would be those information.
No, not that. Yes.
So I think you're trying to figure out where that piece of information is, which is a good thing. You need to know where those things are tied and how those in the time.
You would have a list of lenders available.
So. Do you understand the whole business process around it? That's the question. Do you understand how this is supposed to work?
The process?
The outcome process.
No, the credit application submission process.
Yes.
How does it work? From the business point of view, forget this thing. From a business point of view, how it's supposed to work.
So dealer is creating the credit application and he needs the different things. Out of that, then the dealer shop is required, the lender is required for that application. And the different information about the customer, his SSN and ID, and if it's a joint, then the joint applications.
So I'm talking business process. You're going it more into the system.
Yeah,
Don't
so-
think of system.
so after-
Go from a business process. point of view.
Yeah, so after the dealer submits the credit application to the lender gets a meeting.
That's the post. I'm talking about the process to submit the credit application.
So first,
First you do the loan calculation and based on that you will calculate the monthly payment for the customer. and then-
That's the that. The whole notion around submitting the credit application is, as a dealer, I know that there are a whole bunch of lenders out there who will be that, right? And I have to figure it out when I'm creating this credit application. Is I'm gonna pick one of those guys and say, okay, I'm sending this loan request to you. Do you approve it or not? That is the intent of it, right? So when I go to the dealer, right, take an example, right? When you go to car dealership to buy something, right? What is the normal process, the business process they follow? They don't go and just say, hey, you know what? Let me see who is the lender. Let me see what is their ID. They don't, right? They have a sets of lenders that they know that are available in the system to select it from. And this is, I'm gonna pick this guy, I'm gonna submit the credit application to him or her, whatever. Right? That's the normal business process happens. Like I go it as a dealer, I'm creating this thing for on the behalf of customers. I know it is, hey, here are the like sets of 15 lender available in the system. I'm picking one and then sending the request. There is no notion of, hey, I need to know what the ID is, right? Essentially, typically it is, if you look at it traditionally, it is already a pre-list that I know it. In this case, the way I know the pre-list in that is all the lender who are signed up in the system, right? So if it is not signed up, I won't be even able to bother it, right? Because they are not participating in this business process, right? So your whole notion of not available doesn't even come into the picture, right? You would think way overthinking this thing than what it needs to. It's as simple, and that's where it's the context of understanding business processes. Here, it's as simple as it. Hey, when I'm submitting the application, right?
Have lenders.
There is a two simple scenario. I will try to submit it by selecting a vendor. If it allows me, good. That's one. Or I will try to submit it without selecting a lender and see if the system allows me or not.
yeah.
As simple as that. There's nothing else in this complexity, right? Because all it says is the lender is required or not. Do you agree it from a business point of view? Right? Don't make it things overly complicated. Don't assume it. Get the context of where it is happening. Anjali, are you good with that? Any question?
No, I have just had like lender exits and lender not exist. If not exist, then error message. I just had that.
So it's as simple as that, right? And again, if you try to become even more, all you do it is try to submit a lender application without submitting anything, right? And if it fails, then you know it system enforces, right? So I could simply just do a one simple test case by trying to submit the credit application without putting a lender name and see if it allows me or not. Right? Yes.
There is like a different entity, like a node entity node, that only lender ID
Oh,
is
it's gonna
available,
be-
but not in the lender
Submit with-
credit application. Wow, why does that?
Read it again, credit application, go through it again.
It has like entity node, the lender ID available only over here.
It's there, I think, click the page and, read through it. It's there.
Look through the credit application.
Credit application. Go through the credit application, it's a big. Over there. Go through it.
No, that's it. I know it, but it comes under entity node. Not under credit obligation. Oh, it's not-
Trust me,
Oh, okay.
we've been teaching it for a while. This thing is a lot more inside out for everything. I don't even need to read the document. Okay, everybody understood? Good with the two trees? Ready to shift on third one? Okay. All right. Somebody from the last table, you want to start talking about this? Start with the context and tell us the tree. Come over here.
Go ahead, whatever you come, just provide and we can just.
Let's talk first the context, right? When does this requirement kicks in? Give me the context.
Ability to search lender by lender names. So it should be,
So who is doing the work? Who is searching for it? And when they are trying to search for the method.
dealer ability to search lender by,
When it comes in the play.
dealer is searching lender by name.
The dealer, look at the context, right? Which requirement it falls under, what section?
So lender,
Under managed lender.
Okay, and who can manage them?
dealer,
Can dealer use it?
Right,
No,
so
our
you
plan.
wear the hat of the user. Who is
our plan will manage.
So that's one. So look at the business process 2.3.2. Where you have a table, right, which talks about who all can do the managed lender.
So our plan will manage.
So
Lender
our
and
site
dealer.
administrator is one. Who else can do that?
Regional manager.
You just understand which requirement I'm talking, right? Are you asking question or you're telling me?
We all are asking question actually. We are
I'm
not getting.
I'm asking question, where in the document you find that table? I even told you where exactly it is. So who all can do it? It is the managed lender, right?
Yeah.
Who else can manage lender? It is one of the sections that Herschel pointed out. It's missing. It should be another column. So let's keep it simple. I think it's my recommendation, read the document. It'll be a good read. But you said site administrator, right? So let's say site administrator is focusing on searching lender by lender,
Yes.
right? So that's the context. They're trying to manage the lender.
Mhm.
So let's draw the tree.
Just searching the
And what you said by partial name, full name or by partial?
It will be partial.
Is that the two cases?
No.
Anything else?
Pick from the list manually.
Think about simple. We actually went through that. This is less than 2 hours ago. What did we went through it? Search by dealer name.
Name.
Sound familiar? So what are the things that we talked?
It should display one.
Okay, the scenario one, right? So what's missing here? What additional scenario? Anybody has anything else? So you guys all noted, right? No data part. Can you add the no data, one more scenario?
In middle?
Yeah, anyway.
Only partial.
Did you guys write it down? What I was writing it when the dealer,
Yeah.
certified dealer name? Is this any different than that?
No.
What are the other questions I asked for? Let that know.
If it has to be like in the
Is
beginning.
it starts with it? Yeah, beginning.
Yep, so anywhere partial name.
So it's the same pattern.
Yeah.
If the pattern is same, your use cases should be most likely. that
So it
cases
should be
follow
named
similar.
by partial and
It's
no
the same
data.
pattern, right?
It should be like that.
It's the two, right? Search by name and no data.
Okay.
Right? And the other question you need to ask it is when you pull up that, what all you want to see it, right? You just want to see it in the list, only the lender name or any other information.
But that could be the missing requirement.
Right.
So if you don't have that provided in the requirements section.
Just asking, what all you just want to see it in that list. Okay?
So the same thing like you added like one or zero should either display one lender or
Yeah.
no lender. It could be the case.
Right, you want to know it, whether my search is working or not,
Yeah.
right? So for partial name and no, well, nothing you get for no data, right? But for partial name, it is 1 or 0.
So it
right?
should
At
be
least
only
one
name and no
lender
data
present in the
and
system with
under
that
name,
partial
it could be
or no
partial,
lender
like
present with
that.
that partial name. And then no data, right? So total of 3 test cases, that's what you need.
So,
Right.
no, I'm asking, so it should be only name and no data and this by partial goes in under name
That's what I'm saying.
and same.
Right.
Okay.
But even within the name, then you wanted at least one present in the system or no name present in the system.
Okay,
So that when you search it, are you getting the right search result?
so, and under name,
0 and 1.
0 and 1.
And
Like
then you
this,
pick up by partial.
0 and like this.
Yeah, at least one present with that name or no present with that name.
Okay,
You can get rid of the partial ones.
present. Like this.
Okay. Three, everybody clear? How it needs? Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here's the next steps. Okay. So you have the dealer, the requirements, the map tree that I did, in the 3 that you did, right? So total 4. Here's what I would like it all of you. Okay. So you pick the dealer one. Remember the tree I draw it? So pick one test case from the dealer, write it down as a group. I would like you to pick the first requirement that we did in the homework. Okay, you pick the second one. Okay, and then you pick this last one, right? And so I'm gonna just show that, right? I'm gonna navigate through it. Okay,
We have to write down the test plan for one case scenario.
right. So your team picks one lead from here,
Oh, just one lead.
one lead, one test case,
Okay.
right? And you write the requirement, like it's the detailed test case, step-by-step instruction, everything preconditioned. So Harshal is passing a page. Right, so you write it down, the whole thing. Okay. One test case, one lead. Okay. Ideally, pick the most complex that you think it is. And do it, because that is gonna help you with all the other test cases later. Are you guys clear?
Yes.
What do you need? Good? All right, so this group is done. So for the second group, right? We talked about the username is auto-generated, right? So we talked about 3 test cases. Okay. Pick one. I would recommend pick this thing. Okay, pick this lead, write a test case. Good?
As a team.
As a team, right? Okay. Now, 3 of you, lender is required for credit application, right? So write a test case that. And your team does it, ability to search lender by lender name. Okay? And then Anjali, for you online,
Mhm.
you pick whichever one you want out of the 4.
Okay.
Okay? Good? So hang on, listen to me. It's 11:35. I'm gonna give everybody 30 minutes. Okay, this time not extension. Try to finish your call within 30 minutes because we're gonna review each one of them before we break it for the day. Okay, so write it down, 30 minutes. Figure it out who is gonna come here and present it to. You're gonna talk through it. Okay, to the rest of the class. It's 11:35. We break it at 12:05. Yes. Hang on 1 minute. So I'm gonna put all right, Anjali, are you ready?
Give me 5 minutes. Is that okay?
I,
I think these guys are ready.
are you guys ready, right?
It's okay, you can start. I'll just need to write 2-3 sentences. I'll do that.
Okay, 2 minutes. Let's give it 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put a timer. Right.
It's not there right now. If I was listening, no, who are the members we don't? No, we should.
Who's talking? Tell me the scenario with specific test case, and then talk me through the step-by-step instruction.
So we are doing the set dealership by city,
Okay, search dealership.
and we are doing class one,
Which one?
class one.
Plus one, that means there is at least one exist.
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
So now we go to the project name.
no, just tell me the preconditions.
Okay, the preconditions are a valid dealer, a valid dealer with city names
Uh-huh.
exist in the system.
Can we have one conversation at a time, please?
So a valid dealer with city names
Okay,
exists in the system.
so that's your precondition.
That's a precondition.
What are the steps?
You mean the test design and all
The,
that?
the first step, the test steps.
Oh, okay. So, we're gonna open the Alpha Loan web page
Okay,
and, we're gonna go to the dealer section of the page.
hang on. So who you're logging in is, tell me the user. What user you're logging in as?
There's multiple users who can log in.
Tell me which one you
Site
defining that.
administrator.
Site administrator.
Okay. So that's a logical step, right? So I understand the detail, right? But that's the first logical thing. You're gonna go log in as site administrator. Okay, what is the next thing you're gonna do?
So we're gonna go to the dealer section of the page.
When you say dealer section, can you be more specific?
Um,
So what functionality it is under, it is a managed dealer, is that what you are,
Yes.
yeah,
right?
Okay.
So you can just simply say access managed dealer functionality, right?
Okay. What is the next step? What are you gonna do once you are on that?
so, we're gonna type in the city name in the search field.
When you say type in, where are you gonna find? Where are you gonna type it in?
In the browser.
And search field in the
Search,
search
search,
bar.
sorry, search, yeah.
So you think that there is will be a search section,
Yes.
search field of that? Okay, so you say it's in the search field on dealership
Section.
page, right? What are you gonna do?
Type city name.
Type a city name. Do you have a specific example?
All this.
Because you gotta give the data, right? I'm assuming you did provide all the data for all the other information in the data section. Okay. The rule of thumb is if you give that to this team without asking any question, then can they run the testing? If you don't give the data, what are they gonna put it? Right?
So we have to specify.
You
what-
have to specify, right? When I did this, right? So when I did this thing, we didn't call it completely done until all of this information was present, right? So, because without this, how would you know what to type in? Okay. So in the search field, you're gonna do a type city, Columbus, and then do what? Okay. Then? What is the next step? What are the results you're expecting at this point?
The list of cities,
A list of cities.
the list of dealers was located
In the
in
census.
Columbus,
Okay, how many?
plus one,
More than one.
more than one.
What's next?
That's it, that's it, that's it.
That's it? Okay. Any comment from any of the other team? Any comment online, Anjali?
Mhm.
So number 4, is this a step or it's the
It's a
verification?
expected results.
So that is, should be listed as part of the expected result, because that's what you are expecting. I mean, ideally, you will always have expected result for every.
For every step,
right?
yeah.
Number 4 is number 3 is very important, because that's where you are verified. What makes it pass or fail? Your test case.
The crucial is to making sure you understand. And now again, this is not the detailed step, right? This is what we call as logical steps of how you're progressing your test case. Obviously, you will have further detail, right? As we talked about, go to the homepage URL, login specific that. Then when you say access dealer, you just identify, you go click that. Obviously, there's an expected results at each one of them. What are you gonna see here? And here is the final one. Everybody clear? What to do it? Good? Good progress. All right. Team number 2. Tell me the scenario, test case, and walk me through the steps, logical steps.
The user name is auto generated based on the last name.
Okay, and what scenario you're testing? At least
Yeah, actually.
existing user with that.
Do you have a title that you specified? What is your title? Or
Manage user.
can you repeat the whole thing?
The auto generation of user name.
Okay, your title needs to be really clear. Then what scenario you are testing?
So this is the requirement, right? What is your title?
The user name increments automatically, the same name exists.
Is that what you're looking?
Yeah.
Right, at least one or more than one? More than one, so at least 2 users already exist with the same name? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, So what is your precondition?
First letter of the first name and last letter of the last name.
Precondition.
Yeah. This is the data.
Where-
First letter of the first name.
That's the requirement. What is the precondition?
The user already exists.
No, not,
The user ID,
The user ID. The user name.
so your precondition is there is at least two users exist with the same last name and first name as new user exists in the system, right? Yeah, as the new user, right?
In the data, we put the name, specific name of a person. The first name and last name.
Okay. That's your precondition.
Mhm.
So what is the steps?
Login, the site administration is available to login.
What I wanted for all the other homework assignments you do it, if there is any other person other than site administrator, specify that. Because I think by default, everybody's using only site administrator. The key is understanding who all can access that functionality. Okay. Because that's a lot more easier to just define everything as a super user and put it, everything is going to work in. But who else can do it in the business process, since it's more important. Okay, so login is site administrator.
Access manage users functionality.
Okay.
Type first name and last name.
So when you access the username, whatever the homepage comes in, are you typing a username, first name and last name there?
Create user.
So you have to say that like it's access the create user, right? And then what happens at that create user,
And then we have to mention the name.
right? But remember, access user is not just the first name and last name. Access user is a whole bunch of things, or create
We have
user
to
is
Go on, create.
create a new user,
creation,
right?
Create user, username, button or something.
Yeah, so you need to provide all the information needed, right, to create. Okay, what is the expected results here? And what is the action you're doing it?
The expected. The username.
One person at a time. Who is the spokesperson of the table?
The username.
So walk me through that. I'm on the create new user screen. Walk me through them. What are the steps you're going to do?
First name, last name.
Is that the only field? When I'm creating a user, am I only providing a first name and last name?
No, we need to, then provide the date of birth, existing, all the details we have created.
Do you put an SSN number?
Where would we look for that information?
What kind of user do you want? There's no date of birth.
All right, I think you guys need to do a little bit more search on it. You can't just like it's throw it everything in the possible that you know it for the use screen, right? You have to follow what is in the requirements document. Right? So logically, you provide some information. What happens next?
We need to give the user type, the email ID, phone number.
Right.
Area.
Right, so list it out all of those. But once you provide that, what do you do?
Create a new user.
How do you know? Again, you're jumping it directly. You're lumping everything that you need in a user test case by saying you create a user. I want a specific, what are you doing with that? How are you going about to create the user? And how are you going to verify it?
You have to give permission.
You have to take any other action after step number 3.
Pass, we have to give the password.
Hang on, let them finish it. Tell me how you visualize it. Because you haven't tested anything yet, in my mind. You just created a user. So, right, what is the expected results when you say it here?
The user ID with increment 2 is generated successfully.
Okay. A new user is created, right? User ID, what will be the user ID?
User ID, as mentioned in the
First letter of the first name and the last name.
and correct increment. would be the original.
And then what?
Increment would be what you-
Like this, right?
Yeah.
Are we gonna verify it?
We mentioned that specific username in the data section. So
No, so you created this user, how are we gonna verify that it is still indeed created in the system? Just because system displayed something, that doesn't mean it created user with that name.
I could manage, I could go manage user and then I could try to. Is it what you are asking?
Now, how would I know that the user is created successfully? You created a new user, right?
Mhm.
How do I know that worked?
I get a success message,
Is that sufficient?
email on.
The list of
Yeah.
users was this particular name has to be
You
displayed.
need to, you need to try again.
You're too much trusting on the system, the guy who writes the code.
You need to
We
try.
need to go and log in again and see whether it is created or not.
Yeah, so you log out right here,
Yeah, we log out and we need to go inside and log in.
right? And then file. Log in,
You can do it, right? You can log out, log in as a new user,
Yeah.
or just for the user.
yeah. Do you have a search user functionality?
The manage you, yeah.
Does the manager has a search user functionality?
I don't know.
Well, you are the one who read the requirements document. You can't throw, I don't know, because that won't work with the users, I can tell. You need to figure it out. How are you gonna verify that it did work? That should be part of your test case. Right? You're getting there halfway, but you're not clarifying your thoughts. You got to clarify your thoughts. A good use case or test case is if I take it from one team, give it to the other team, they can run, execute, understand it without asking you a single question. The moment they have to ask you a question, that's a clear indication you did not specify the needed detail. Do you feel you can give your test case to this group and they will be able to execute it exactly the way that you envision? That means you have work to do it in your test case steps and expected results. Okay. All right. Let's go to that third team.
Sorry, I have.
Uh-huh.
So if he has to log in and test the new user, does he need a password? Or how can he log in without a password and check that that is a correct username?
So what is create a user involved? I don't know, you tell me.
Yes. Get the passport also, it should be added.
Where would you see that information in the document? Can everybody point?
In the users.
Are you asking or are you telling? So where would you see it? Rest of the team, help her, where would you see it?
Is there a required fee?
So one of the main conditions, we need to give the passport should be given in that data. That's what negotiations. Should I mention this in the document?
So what is this?
I didn't put it. So it includes all the things.
So you tell me what all is information needed, and where would you find? And where? In the detailed design data section. Right? All of those things is specific. That's why we keep saying it is. Read the document, own the document, understand the whole thing. That's the only way you're going to be able to write the test case. Okay.
All the required information.
You have to understand what is required information when you're trying to create it.
One more thing. So for creating new user, do they need to create 3 times using the same first name and last name? Then we will know that.
It depends on what your precondition, right?
Because they
So-
mentioned that it's, they need at least new user.
This is the precondition, right? So if there was no precondition, then yes, you are right. You have to create 3 different users with the same username and same first name and last name and see it if it works.
So if you get rid of this precondition, then you have to repeat the step. So
3 times.
First user, second user, third
And
user.
then to get your, you go to
Right.
auto generated.
Yes. Right. So it depends on how you define your precondition, right? That becomes a scope. So these are the logical step, right? So there's still details that you need to flesh it out, but here are the type of things that you do it. Okay. Christy, your team. Tell me the use case, what you wrote it. What is the requirement?
Lender is required for credit application. Because I was advertising, the precondition is you have to have some application without.
Hang on, hold on. One thing at a time. And can you see it louder so that Anjali can listen to? So that's a requirement. What is specific test case? So the tree had 2 test cases, right? Which one you wrote it?
Oh, the first one, able to submit the application, most of the lender.
Okay.
To submit the application.
So that needs to go in your test title. Whatever condition you are specifying. Needs to be part of your test title. So that whoever is reading it, they know what you are testing.
And what are the precondition?
The dealer cannot submit an application without submitting.
That's not precondition, that's a requirement. What is the precondition? What should be true in the system before you start with that test case? What you're saying, a dealer cannot submit credit application without selecting a lender. To me, that's a requirement. It's not a precondition. What is your precondition?
Can you select a lender if the lender doesn't exist in the system? Right, so that needs to go in your precondition, that specific lender.
Right.
exists in the-
Right, so lender exists in the system.
Whatever lender you are using, make sure that same lender you are saying.
Right. So you be specific, right? So I'm just gonna say lender ABCD exists in the system. Okay, what are your steps?
So the outcome of the CIF can get into the log into the system.
Okay, so dealer user.
We can click on the application button.
So click on the access new credit application, right? Access create new credit application. You don't know because sometimes it's not designed, right? So you don't know how it will be accessed.
Right.
You might have to go and revise your steps. What's the design?
Okay.
This is logical step. You are right.
So then what is the next thing you have to do? I access that section that allows me to create new credit application. What is the next step I do?
They can fill it out.
Create a new credit application, right? Okay. What all information you want to provide? Okay. What is the expect? What are you doing it? No, so. What is the logical steps? When you say, are you done with creating credit application and then you're going to the next one?
No, you can fill it out
Fill it out and then do what? Click submit,
and then. Copy.
okay?
Mhm.
So when you do submit, what happens? What is expected results?
It should be-
So why do you even bother having this requirement? If I'm able to create it, there's no reference to the lender. And I'm successfully able to submit application. Then this thing is not even applicable, right?
Mhm.
So why even write a test case? This test case is not even applicable. There has to be something with the lender here. What is it?
Select a lender.
Right, you need to select lender, which lender you need to select. ABCD, right? So yeah, as part of it is you have to be very specific, right? Okay. So when you submit it, what happens at expected results? What should be expected result?
Lender display successfully.
Sorry, there are two people talking.
The lender is able to.
Is lender able to receive?
Or they can email.
Okay. You got to be very clear. Or
Lender,
you can assume me filling in details for you. So what is going to happen, expected results? Anjali, hold on to that. Go ahead, Chris and team.
The expected result is that the lender is able to receive an email notification.
Okay. Which lender?
ABC.
Yeah, it just needs to be very specific, who is going to receive email, so that it makes it clear. These all lenders more specific.
Right. Now, again, even before that, right, the first thing needs to happen is credit application has to be created successfully. Right? So the expected result is first thing is credit application is created successfully. Right? Then second one is lender gets that email, right? How are you going to verify that lender got an email? Is it required for this one? Let me ask that question first. Okay, go back to scope, right? What is the scope? Is the scope to make sure lender did get that? Or is the scope that I can create a credit application with that lender? Just the creating, right? So I don't have to worry about whether lender got the email or not. That's outside the scope. But I need to make sure that the lender essentially is required, right? And that's what you did. But this one, this is a positive test case, right? What will be the post condition? Application is created, right? Successfully.
Yeah, if I have to test it, right, I would test the negative scenario. That is-
Precisely.
That
That will prove it because this did only a part of it is
Right.
this is a positive reinforcement, right? But if you do negative, the absence of that will automatically indicate that I require.
So you don't supply the lender in the step number 3, then try to save it, create the career, submit career application, see if it actually. Right? If it doesn't, that means it's good.
Right.
That is basic one.
Good. Anything else? All right. Let's talk about this group. Tell me the condition, requirements, and specific test case we use.
Search lender. Ability to search the lender by lender name.
This is your requirement. What is the specific test case?
Search lender by lender name.
That's the same thing as a requirement. What is your test case?
Which make your test.
Search lender by partial.
What are your preconditions?
A valid lender name exists in the data. Section existing.
You have to be very specific, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What is the steps?
Browser or navigate the background system.
Okay.
By typing the URL,
Okay, then you log in as which user?
dealer user,
Does the dealer have access?
dealer user has able to search the
They have access.
Is can dealer user access lender search functionality?
because he needs it to fill the credit application.
Okay, your context is wrong. When this.
Well, Which functionality this requirement is part of? You're saying it's this functionality is part of based on what you describe is correct, like submit credit application. I'm saying that's not the part of that functionality.
Is everybody given one?
We talked about it when we did that.
We did.
What is the functionality? It's a manage lender, right? So this is as a site administrator, it's not as a dealer user. Okay,
Manage lenders.
Okay.
Type in the lender name, it's one Z.
where? Where are you gonna type in?
Lender entity.
There should be a search window, right?
Yeah.
Not lender.
Yeah.
Got to be very specific. I'm gonna be painfully over and over telling you that. The way you're describing it, if I give it to the other team, they have no idea what you're talking about, right? So you be very explicit with the data, with the detail. If you're not that explicit, the context is not gonna be understood by somebody else. And I'll tell you that what happens is, you write this test cases today. 3 months later, when you're executing it, you yourself have no clue what you're talking about. The only way you're gonna know it is by providing the detail. A lot of times that happens is you design the test cases, it's executed by somebody else. Okay, therefore it needs to be very explicit and clear. Okay, so in the search field, what are you gonna search for?
It's one Z.
Okay, what should be the expected result?
It's one lender.
You're saying at least one vendor?
No, it's
You're gonna be very specific.
Yes.
Is there only one lender with XYZ in the system, or there are more?
Exposure to particular name.
Right,
It's like issue.
Because the reason is if you say everything matching with it, it shows it. That means you're telling me, I don't know how many. And if I don't know how many, is it search work as expected or not? I have no clear. Right? Because your precondition just said only one person exists with that name. And if your expected results is one or more, something went wrong. It should match exactly same thing that we expected.
Change that to in the search field, search using X and Y, X, Y rather than
We did a
because the
partial.
partial name.
You guys tell me. I'm just capturing what you're telling me here. Okay. Good. Nalini, you want to share anything that you did? I'm sorry, Anjali. It's time for a coffee. Anjali, are you
Yeah.
able to get-
Yes, I have worked on lender is required for credit application.
Okay,
Actually, I have sent one table to you for that, but by doing all this in exercise, I understood what mistake I did there. The last one.
so this is definitely not a dealer login, right?
Mhm.
You're not doing a submit credit application.
The create,
Okay,
and I did
okay,
both.
so you need to
Yes.
rewrite it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay. So did everybody understand it? The whole process, what we did it, like it's took a requirement, broke it down in there, pick one of the lead, wrote the test cases. And when you write test cases, you still have some refinement to do it. Right? So any questions in the whole process? Do you understand it?
Yeah, because just on the
Hang on.
template that you gave, is that this is the logical steps
Right.
that we wrote. right?
I was just capturing the logical step based on what you're
Then,
describing.
we are going to write the test case.
You have to write the
using
detail.
template.
Yes. Right. This is, I'm just kind of capturing what we are talking about here, right? So the normal process is you're not going to write that step by step unless you have some logical idea of what you want to do. So this is that brain dump of what logical idea do you want to do it. Now you have to take this and write into detailed steps and expected results for every step. Right.
So can you please explain, I know in our, we had written about the ability to search lender by lender name, and then I think in this case, we had did mention that instead of login as site administrator, login as dealer user doesn't work. I mean,
So the context of requirement, right? So when is that requirement comes into the picture? It's when a site administrator is trying to manage a lender. It's not when the dealer user is trying to create a credit application,
okay.
right? So the context is most important, and that's going to determine who is using it. Right? If the requirement was, hey, a dealer user should be able to search all the lenders before assigning it them to credit application, then yes. But that's not what the requirement is,
So it's based on the context. that-
based on the context of the requirements, right?
So you need to look at the module, which module it is part of, and then where that module belongs to.
Okay.
As part of the business process.
All right.
You have to understand the business process, understand the context, look at the requirement. That's in that overall context. And who is doing the work, right? Then you go back to the security side of things, then you figure out who can, who has access to perform the activity.
And it's most important, right? Because if you assume that, hey, I'm going to do this, the moment you get the system and you log in as a dealer user, you're not gonna have an access lender functionality at all. Because that's not the authority that you're gonna have it as that particular user. Right? What's gonna happen? You have to rewrite the whole test case.
Or
Right.
you will end up creating a bug, and developer will jump on it. Say,
Right.
you don't understand the requirement.
Okay. So here is what you need to do it between now and Thursday. Okay. So, first thing I would recommend all of you, right? Your test case is not the way it should be. Right, as we go through it. Each one of you, like, so for 4 of you, the test case that you started, I would like you to flush it out in detail for that. Same thing for you, same thing for the other groups, right? And Anjali, you will do the same thing for your stuff.
Okay.
Test case that you were writing. So that's one thing. Make sure you are able to crystal clearly write it down what we talked here in the class as you group. Second thing, Herschel is going to send you out 5 requirements. For each one of them, you need to build a tree individually before Thursday. And we'll review that on the Thursday section. Okay. Third thing, each of the group wrote only one. We did 4 tree here in the class, right? I would like all of you to write at least one test case for the remaining 3. So as an individual, you're writing 4 test cases for all the 4 things that we talked here. And Herschel has already sent it out the tree for the 4 that we talked in the class here, right? So all these 4 trees, I'm gonna minimize it.
Pick one test case and write.
One test case for each one of those, you're gonna write it. Okay, so writing 4 detailed test cases individually and doing individually 5 trees for the 5 requirement that Herschel is sending out in the email. That's the homework for Thursday. I would strongly recommend read at least 1 or 2 more times all of the document so that you understand the whole context. Because as you write the requirements, important thing is to understand what context, who is able to do it and why they are able to do it. And what should be expected, what are the required information, right? So that's how the whole circle comes into play together.
And do we need to read the test plan that you mentioned?
That was yesterday's homework. Yes, you have to do that.
So by Thursday.
Yes.
Well, we don't review test plan, so you can read it on your own time.
But if you have any questions, that's the whole point. I wanted you guys to be aware of it, what it's written.
So we are on.
4 test cases, 5. Yeah. But again, I would still recommend, right? Test plan in the 2 documents. Right? And this is the normal process that you will go through it. As you go into a workplace, you will reread the requirements document till you thoroughly understand it. Okay. Any questions? Is the drive open up here? Where is it? Okay. You can send out an email, right?
I have not sent it. Okay, it's 6.
So it's 6. Okay. All right. So Herschel is going to send it out. Here are the 6 requirements for which you need to build the tree.
It's part of your requirements document, so it is there. Make sure you understand the context of each of those and work through the same
And
process.
you can see it in which section it belongs, in, right? The loan calculator, manage lender, approve, reject. And the first one is the managing. trust.
Well, actually, it's fine because this one they already completed.
So they all, which one they did, manage lender? Yeah, you already did 263.
Yep.
263, we already did in the class, so the remaining 5 is.
Remaining fine.
You'll be getting a recording of.
Yes, it generally takes about a day, but I'll say, hopefully I'll upload by tonight. Both sessions, yesterday and today.
You don't have to worry about. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, any question on this one? Everybody good?
Everybody clearly understand what is expected between now and Thursday.
And I'll send it in the email, what you need to do. Okay,
So for this one, you need to do 3. For the 4 that which is on the class. That's case for you.
detailed, we don't want to see detailed test cases for any of these 5. Okay,
You will do it.
that is
First
next,
Thursday.
next Saturday, yeah.
And are you gonna send us a copy of the?
It's already there in the digital, the template is there, you can print as much. as you need. Yes, I'll be sending.
I think you already sent it out.
Oh, yes, I already do.
The side admin, the one that I did it earlier in the morning.
Yep.
You already sent it out the detail.
Yeah,
Including the freeze, he already sent out freeze.
Can we receive the copy of the notepad you were filling for
Sure.
other groups? or-
Yes, I'll be sending that. So, yep,
Good with that? There's no other questions? We can pause for the day today. Or should we- Yeah, I've stopped the recording.
okay. Okay, anyway, we're gonna stop here. Otherwise,
Because we'll already did this. Okay. Do you have any questions, David?
do you have any questions? Okay, all right, then we're gonna break here, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.